The Great Ocean Road is one of the most iconic stretches of road in Australia. Winding its way along 243 kilometres of rugged coastline, it connects townships that were once only accessible by boat or by an arduous journey through hard country. Built in part by returned servicemen, the road is a living memorial to the Victorians who served in World War I and the longest war memorial in the world. 2019 marks 100 years since construction began. Famous for its seafood, shipwreck history and rolling hills, Apollo Bay sits at the foothills of the Great Otway National Park on the traditional lands of the Gudda Bunud. The Eastern Maar people have lived on this country for generations, with occupation sites dating back as far as 40,000 years.
Our generations have been here forever. When I say my country, it is in the same way that I say, this is my daughter, this is my son. I don't own them, but they are mine. I belong to them, they belong to me. And it is in that tone that we say, this is our country, this is my country.
The first European settlers to the area were timber cutters. In the 1850s, they built sawmills in the town. Although the bay provided a sheltered anchorage, the lack of a suitable pier meant that logs were floated out to sea to be loaded onto ships.
Before the roads, sea travel was used a lot. My grandfather, he was one of the masters of one of the ships to bring supplies in and take supplies out. And of course, people rode their horses too.
Before the road, the small fishing village of Apollo Bay was so cut off that in a medical emergency there was little that could be done to help. Your best shot at survival was to call on the bush nurse.
They'd be called out middle of the night. They'd have their equipment in their backpack. They'd have a pack on their back and a pack on their horse. People from their farms further out, they'd come and get the nurse. If a woman was labouring, most of the women just had their babies with a friend to help them before the nurse was stationed here. Yes, they were wonderful people, those pioneers. How they stuck at it, really, and they always seemed to tackle it with strength and humour, and I can't help admiring them.
In July of 1918, the Great Ocean Road Trust made the decision to build the 18-mile section of road from Lorne to Cape Patton first. On the 28th of August 1918, a survey team arrived in Apollo Bay to commence work, and in September of 1919, construction on the Great Ocean Road began.
The surveyors over the mountainous areas laid out their survey lines along the ridges at the top of the cliff, and these returned servicemen lowered themselves over the cliff with just a rope tied around their waist, and they lowered themselves to the level where the road was to be constructed, and then they literally dug toe holds, and then they started to dig into the cliff. They dug away the cliff face to create the road surface. They were doing that with pick and shovel.
The Great Ocean Road is famous for its shipwrecks, and Apollo Bay is no exception. The SS Casino was Apollo Bay's last trading vessel. On the morning of Sunday the 10th of July 1932, disaster struck.
She was tied up at the local pier and a strong sea came in. It was the captain's choice to leave, try and head back to Melbourne.
It wasn't realised that the fluke of the anchor had pierced her hull.
It was listing badly, and the captain realised they were in a lot of trouble. So then he tried to beach the ship.
She put about again and headed for the beach, but sank.
They tried to rescue people, but unfortunately there were 10 lives lost.
The stewardess, Mrs. Helena Gill, helped passengers with lifebuoys and lifebelts, but had no time to put on her own. She was one of the 10 lives lost that day.
It was a very rough sea out there. You can still see the shadow of the wreck.
Today, Apollo Bay is a thriving town with an abundance of top fishing spots and considered the seafood capital of the Great Ocean Road. It's a natural playground with plenty of activities for everyone. To hear more stories of the Great Ocean Road, continue east to Wye River and Lorne, or further along the road to Anglesea and Torquay.